Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Facebook Live today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I see we have a full house. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in from near and from far. I see comments about the weather. Heather says she's near Belleville, Ontario, Canada. It's supposed to be rain and then snow today. This looks like a perfect day to be doing a course with you. So definitely in the cold weather, that makes it a perfect time to sit in and do a Facebook Live, learn more about genealogy and family history. But really, any day is a good day, no matter what the weather is like outside. I was just speaking with Lisa, our speaker, before today's show, and she was saying that it's nice and sunny outside. So definitely a good opportunity to go outside, but really, us genealogists know that it doesn't matter what the weather is. We're interested in sitting down and doing some genealogy research. So let us know what the weather is like where you are today and what you're up to these days. We love to hear from you and get to know our audience. So thank you all for joining in. I see we have Karen from Sweden. We have, let's see, another Karen from Oklahoma, Janine from Tennessee, Mary from Dayton, Ohio, Elise from Virginia. So thank you all for tuning in. It's so great to see you all in our audience today. We have a great session lined up for you. Before we start, I'll just let you know about something that we have going on at MyHeritage. We actually have free and unlimited use of some of our photo tools available for the next few days until February 5th. So it's a great opportunity for you to check out our photo tools. This includes MyHeritage in Color, which colorizes your old black and white family photos, the MyHeritage Photo Restore feature, which restores the colors in old faded color photos. This is the MyHeritage Photo Repair, which will repair scratches and tears that you may have in some old photos. So some really great tools. Oh, and I'm forgetting one of my favorite, the MyHeritage Photo Enhancer, which enhances photos and really brings them into sharp focus. So these are fantastic tools that we typically have a limit for basic users to use them. And this week until February 5th, they are available unlimited use and for free. So now is a good opportunity to take out those family photos, scan them in, play around with the photo tools. I know you'll be amazed. I'm amazed every single time I use them, and I've used them many, many times. So I'm sure you will be as well. So please take a look and try them out. And of course, if you're not able to or you miss this promotion, with the MyHeritage Complete Plan, you do get unlimited use of all these photo tools as well. So definitely if you upgrade your MyHeritage account, you will get free and unlimited use also of these tools. In addition, we will have a giveaway for today's show. We will be giving away a MyHeritage Complete Plan, the plan I was just talking about. This is the best plan that we have to offer at MyHeritage. It'll give you unlimited use of all those photo tools, as well as advanced DNA features, access to all of our 16 billion historical records that we have on MyHeritage, and much, much more. So I see all these comments coming in from viewers who have tried our photo tools, just how amazing they are. They really are incredible, and definitely something you should try out over the next few days if you can while this promotion lasts. So this giveaway for MyHeritage Complete Plan, all that you have to do is just leave us a comment in the comments section. And since we'll be talking about cemeteries today, let us know in the comments section what's the most incredible discovery that you've made in a cemetery, whether it be a cemetery record, a death record, a burial record, or actually in a physical cemetery. Let us know in the comments section, and we'll be choosing one lucky winner to win at the end of today's show. As always, leave any questions or comments that you have throughout the session. We will be taking questions at the end, so we hope to get to as many of them as possible. So let me bring, before I bring our speaker, Lisa, to come and say hello to everyone, I'll just introduce her. She's been on our show before. It's really quite a pleasure to have her here joining us today. As a genealogy researcher and creator of the Are You My Cousin blog, Lisson takes the overwhelm out of genealogy research and keeps researchers moving forward, finding their ancestors. Whether researching ancestors alongside clients or writing how-to articles and books, Lisa uses her many years of research experience to help others build a solid research plan, find the needed genealogy records, and get the most out of those resources. When not working with clients or writing genealogy articles or appearing on our Facebook Live, Lisa can be found pursuing her passion for running, traveling with her husband, or spending time with her lovely children. So I'm going to bring her on here to say hello to us today and to introduce her session herself. It looks like a really exciting one, so we're really looking forward to this. Hello, Lisa.
Hey, Esther. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics today, and that's cemetery research.
Us too. We're really looking forward to this.
Wonderful. Well, if you want, you can go ahead and bring up the slides, and we'll just jump right into it.
Okay, fantastic. Here, let me bring them up, and I'll let you know when we can see them.
Okie doke.
Put them front and center. There we go. Now you're good to go.
Good to go. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me again and taking some time this afternoon. And I'm going to be talking with you about 6 types of photos that you need to take before you leave that cemetery. So I don't know if you're like me, but I love taking my research outside of my office and getting into the cemeteries because there's just so much fantastic information to find there. But when I was just kind of starting out, I made a lot of mistakes, and I would find myself having to go back to the cemetery more than once to get pictures or to get information that I honestly had missed the first time, or to follow up on clues. So it was an interesting type of, it was a good learning experience for me. Fortunately, most of those cemeteries were not too far from me, and I was able to actually go back and do it. But it was, it did take time and energy and effort to get back to those cemeteries. Now, one thing you'll notice as we go through this, you'll notice I'm using U.S. Examples here in the U.S. I am here in North Carolina, but these types of photos, these are not specific to a U.S. cemetery. It's applicable to any cemetery you go to, large, small, family cemetery, in whatever country. So look, I want you to think about in terms of types of photos, not so much the location of the photos. Oops, it didn't go. Let me get it going here. Okay, so before we get started thinking about the photos, I need to make sure that we're ready for our genealogy research in that cemetery, right? There are a few things you want to make sure that you take. And there are other things you might want to add into it, but these are the basics, things I always make sure I have with me when I'm heading out to do some cemetery research. First of all, I need to have a list of the ancestors that I'm looking for. Which gravestones am I looking for? And to be honest, a lot of times I will have this on my phone, but oftentimes I will put it on like a little notepad or paper to take it with me. It's just easier to glance down than have to open the phone and go through all that. So make sure you know who you're looking for. You don't want to miss anybody. I always have MyHeritage app, or use your family history app of choice, family tree app of choice, because what I found early on, and again, I had made this mistake, was that when you find somebody and you realize, oh, wait, I didn't realize they were in this cemetery. I didn't realize this ancestor or this collateral. How do they fit, or do they fit in my family tree? You can pull it up and look right there. And then, of course, your smartphone, which is my basic research tool when I'm out and about. Make sure it's charged. Make sure it's fully charged, and or take one of the portable chargers with you so that you get everything, because that's going to be, it's your camera, it's your video camera, it's your research tool. So you definitely want to make sure you have that with you and in good working order. Now, you may throw some extra things in there as well. And because I live in North Carolina, you definitely want to throw in the bug spray, just to put that out there. Okay, let's talk about the types of photos. Okay, so you want to take a picture of the front entrance of that cemetery. So the front gate, the front office, whatever. It could be elaborate, it could be very small, it could be non-existent, but it's whatever that point of entry is into the cemetery. so that you know the name of the cemetery. It may give you the history of the cemetery. Sometimes they'll give you little blurbs that can be important to your research. It can give you cemetery office information. So if you're in an actual formal cemetery, as opposed to say a family cemetery that you find in the woods, then take pictures of that. So take pictures of any signage that's there. These don't have to be crazy, wonderful pictures. They just have to be readable and usable for you to look at. The reason you want these photographs, number one, is it does help you remember where your photos are from. This is the very first picture I take, so that I know everything coming afterwards in my camera is part of that cemetery. I'm looking at the history because, again, we can get family history clues out of that. And I want to make sure I have that office information so that if I think of something later and I want to follow up on a clue, then I can easily call and get in touch with the cemetery office. You won't necessarily find this at every cemetery, but if you do, anything there's a sign, you want to take the picture of. Other things that you might want to consider taking photographs of. If there is a map, sometimes in larger ones, they'll have a map posted at the entrance or somewhere within the cemetery. Take a picture of that. Get a really good picture of that. That can help you when you're going back and looking and doing your research and analyzing your photos to make sure you still remember that basic layout and maybe what section you were in. So I find having maps are very helpful. Let me hang on, let me go back. I want to pull up my laser pointer because I want to show you something on this one that I want you to look at. When I took a picture of this map, so you see up here, I don't know if you can really read that very well, but it says Town of Chapel Hill Parks and Recreation. So that, in a sense, tells me if I have questions about this, they're the ones, I would probably start there to see where else I could find more information. So again, it just gives me a clue to one of the local offices that might have more information about this particular cemetery. So I did want to point that out so you guys could see that. The one on the right is actually, if anybody has been to Charleston, South Carolina, which is a wonderful city to be a tourist in, is the Circular Congregational Church. So again, oftentimes we may find ourselves in a church cemetery. So I make sure I get a picture of the church sign so that I know what church I was in. I know what denomination or what faith that church is. And I can then, if I need to, then I can follow up with them, perhaps if I'm looking for an actual cemetery record within their file. So I always take these particular photographs. And you can see they're not what you would say great photographs that are going to win any awards, but they convey the information that I need. And that's the important part with these photos. Now, the second type of photograph, now you realize, guys, you recognize I have not even gotten to my ancestors' graves at this point. I've already started taking these photographs. And that is the general layout of what the cemetery looks like. I want to know kind of what the landscape is. Is it rolling? Is it flat? Is it well tended? I want to know kind of an overview if I'm standing there looking, what types of stones are they? Are they older? Are they more of a modern type of stone? I just want to kind of get that idea. And again, part of it is if you are like me and are a visual person, these are photographs that help me remember what that cemetery looked like. And this is also a good time to do, if you wanted to just do a little quick video on your phone. This is a great way to use your video camera and just get a really quick video that you can actually narrate with any tips or any things that you happen to think about along the way before you get on into your ancestor's actual grave. So a couple things. This is the type of photograph I might take. You can see that first one. There's a historic church in the background. I know immediately when I see this, I'm thinking very typical. This is rural Virginia. It looks very much like the normal landscape. I'm seeing some older stones in that first one. I'm also seeing there we go. I'm seeing some of the older stones here. I'm seeing some that look to be newer. So, it reminds me that this is a large cemetery. It's still, and it covers a large span of years. And again, the other thing to think about when I'm looking at these, I'm seeing some of these old stones here that have been broken or worn down, and I'm thinking, okay, what else might be here? What other types of stones? And so you can see on the right, this is the same cemetery, and I'm wondering, oh, maybe I'm looking at some field stones. These are actually field stones that are marking graves, and so that's again something else that I want to know that they have these in that cemetery, because it could help with my research further on, that maybe if they're my ancestors, there's generally no markings on these, so I would have to pursue records if they exist. Okay, and then you get to your ancestors' gravestone. So I've already kind of gotten all the way to those first two, and I would say this is, of course, this is the fun part, and I want you to think about when you take the photograph of your ancestors' gravesite, take a bunch, make sure you're looking at the front of that tombstone, but also make sure you're looking at the back of the tombstone. So it's obvious, you're going to take a picture of the front, right? So I thought this was a cool one. So here's an example of one that I did. So I took this picture. This is in rural North Carolina for a small community in Eastern North Carolina. And I thought this was really quite exciting because I found this particular tombstone, and the front of it, I mean, that's great information. You know, it's a Thomas tombstone. We have Sarah, we have Grisham, we have birth and death dates for both. But you do notice this is a fairly modern stone, but you look at these death dates are in the 1850s, 1856 and 1858. So that is something to think about, in the sense that this particular stone is a newer stone, and that's important to my research going forward. But then I got particularly excited because I walked around the back of this tombstone. And check this out. Okay, we have Grisham and Sarah Oliver Thomas. We have all of their children. We have Sarah's maiden name is Oliver. That's pretty exciting stuff. So this is obviously, again, that newer tombstone. But if I had not gone to the back, I would have missed this very important information on the back of the tombstone. Now, I want to interject here in the sense that this is that modern tombstone. So in the back of my mind as a researcher, I'm going to obviously take the information down, but I'm also going to confirm it. Mistakes happen on tombstones, and they were very expensive to fix. So sometimes they just didn't fix them. So tombstones are actually secondary sources, because they might have been done close to the time of death, or they may have been done many, many, many years later. So as in the case of this one. So you want to keep that in mind, but still that principle of looking at the front and then walking around the back of it is an important thing to do, so that you don't miss, again, any clues or any potential information that's back there. I've even seen, believe it or not, on some of the backs, I've seen like the family recipe for a certain food that maybe would never be given out while the person was alive, so they had it put on their tombstone. I've actually seen that. It's really quite interesting to see, but you just never know what you might find. Now, I want to show you another example for this. So these are two very close up. I do have the photo of the whole thing. So this was on the left, we have C.S. Howard. I had been looking for him. I knew he was in this particular cemetery and was thrilled to find the tombstone. But I had been told by another researcher and distant cousin that his wife was in the cemetery too. And I searched the cemetery and I could not find her gravestone. My mother was with me. We looked and looked and could not find him, until we went around behind C.S. His name was Caswell Howard. We went behind his tombstone and pulled back. You can see right here, pulled back this big bush, and we had to sidestep the big mound of fire ants that were there too. It was a very active colony of fire ants, so we had to be very careful around. And we discovered Mary Howard, his wife. She was literally on the back side of that tombstone. And had we not done that, I wish we had kind of thought about it earlier in our process. We would have not searched the entire cemetery for her, but when we did find her. And so it is important to do that. You do need to be careful in the event that there's weeds, in the event that there's insects. When you do this, depending on time of year, I am quite cautious. If you're in some of these, maybe a cemetery that's not as well kept up, or maybe it's a very rural, sometimes you might be in an area that's known for snakes and things like that. And I've been in all of these areas, so you just be careful when you're checking out the backsides or moving bushes. The other thing that I would tell you, when you are researching your ancestors or taking those photos of your ancestors' gravestone, is to don't forget to photograph any and all symbols that are on that particular gravestone. Any shapes, anything unusual, and I will do this on all sides. Okay, so get close-ups. You want to get that photo, of the whole stone, but get close-ups of any part that you feel like is pertinent to your research. And even if you're not sure what you're going to do with that at the moment, take the picture anyway. This may be the only time you ever get to take that photograph, so go ahead and take it. You'd rather have too many and ones you don't use than not have the one you need. So that's exactly what I did. This is a Woodman of the World. I think Woodman of the World symbol and type of tombstone that they have. It's a very distinct one. Again, over here we have another type of fraternity or organization here on this particular tombstone. So you just want to make sure you're getting up close photos of that, so that you can then go back and use research and use tools to find out what that was, what that particular organization was, what they did, and learn a little bit more about your ancestor there. Now, when you are researching your ancestors, or when you are taking a photograph of your ancestor's tombstone, I tended originally to take photos more like that one on the left. But I was really struggling sometimes when I'd get back home and couldn't actually read some of the tombstones that I took. I'm not trained. I don't consider myself all that skilled. And I hear that from a lot of my readers. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who is a photographer over at Be Photo Fluent. And she's like, Lisa, she said, I'll tell you, the number one thing you got to do is you got to get up close. She said, if you take a picture and you cannot read it, you are not close enough on that. So definitely get the photograph. The one on the left shows us where it kind of sort of is in the cemetery. It gives us an idea of kind of some of the spacing. But when you want to read it, get up close. So the one on the right, I got down hands and knees, or actually I think I was sitting cross-legged, and just I tried multiple different photographs to get that one so that I could get close up to read it. Again, it was a cold winter day when I did it. But by doing that and by getting down on the ground, I was actually able to take that. So now when I take photographs, and I would encourage you to do this, if you can, squat down to take a picture, sit on the ground. I've actually laid down on the ground to get a good photograph of something. So don't be afraid to do that and get super close if you need to, because you're going to come away with a better photograph, and one that you can then take home, and maybe you need to do some adjustment through a photo editing software to be able to read it, but you'll be able to have more success with that particular tombstone reading. Now, once you've kind of taken the photographs of your ancestors' tombstones, the front, the back, the sides, gotten up close with it, I want you to then turn your attention to the tombstones on all sides of that ancestor's grave. So don't just take the picture of your ancestor's photograph and run. Okay, there's a lot more there that you could miss, a lot more clues you could miss if you don't stay with it for a little bit longer. So in this case, you want to think your ancestor's tombstone, you want to look at the pictures on the gravestones on either side. maybe the ones that are in front of them, the ones that are in back of them. I kind of think about that. The ancestor's gravestone is kind of being the center of a clock, and I take pictures at, at all around the clock face. So definitely I'm looking at 12, 3, 6, 9, but then if there's anything else within that, I'm going around the circle, I'll take those as well. Because you don't ever know how they might be related. Were they an associate of your ancestor? Are they related? Are they not related? They may have literally nothing to do with your ancestor, but they might, and you don't want to miss that. So again, this is just an example of the Niemeyer's big tombstone, the one on the left there. You can see I would probably also take a picture of. There's one over here to the right that I would take a picture of. I would walk around behind the big one and see what's behind, if there's anything appropriate behind this one. And then, of course, standing here, I would turn around and see if there's anything in front, which I don't believe there was on this one. So I'm looking around to see. Again, obviously, this is going to be some family member, because same name. I think that was the son, but there could be neighbors. There could be collateral family members. And then again, there could be the person next to it could not have anything to do with them, but you don't know that for sure. You may need to research that out, because we don't want to miss a collateral ancestor that we weren't even aware of that might be there. Here's another example. You can see this. There are a lot of gravestones in this one. This is actually in Durham, North Carolina. And so maybe I'm interested in that one right there, the one in the center. So I'm going to get a really nice picture of that. I'm going to then go on either side of that one, of that particular gravestone. I'm going to take a picture of that headstone. And then I'm even looking here. This one was a broken one. I would take a picture of that to note that there is a grave there. There were, if it could be on the ground, I don't remember off the top of my head, and if it were on the ground, I'd certainly take a picture of it. But I want to know that there's one that seems relatively close and that it's broken, because then if my research warrants it, I can actually check with the cemetery office, because I have the phone number, because I took the picture at the front gate, to see who might be in that plot or whose stone that might be. I'm probably also going to take pictures of, so all of those, I'm going to take a picture of these little ones here. I'm probably going to take a picture of that one as well to see. So anybody that's around, certainly if there's one over here, I'm going to take it to see, comparing names and seeing how they might be related to each other, if they are related. Okay, so you want to take a picture of every gravestone in the family plot. Now, when you do that, you want to make note that you're in a family plot. If your ancestor is there, you want to make note of the order that they are buried, or that the gravestones appear in, and then take a picture of every single one of them, regardless if you know who they are or not. Because if an individual is buried in a family plot, they are there for a reason, okay? It could be that they are an in-law. It could be that they are a close friend. I've seen this happen where they were a close friend and unfortunately died unexpectedly, and there was nowhere else to put them. So they were buried there. You can find previously unknown children may be buried here who died young and kind of between those census years. So sometimes we can find children that we were not aware of in there. So that's an important piece of the puzzle. So let me show you one real quick. So when you're looking, and you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with this, family plots typically will have some kind of delineation around. This one had a little kind of concrete brick wall or concrete wall. Some may be bricks, sometimes they're stones, sometimes it's a little fence, sometimes it's really not anything other than just, a certain space within a cemetery. And so when I talk about taking pictures of everything, I'm talking about every stone in this particular plot. And I would start here and I would take a picture and I'd go down the row. And I always start at the front. I work front to back, left to right. That is my own personal system. If you work opposite, that's perfectly fine. But it's so that I know when I'm going back through the order that they were in. It's that way I always keep up with the order that things are taken in, and to make sure I don't miss anybody. This is actually the family marker here, and then there's some back here, as you can see, that go back, and then there is actually a military stone here within this family plot. So what I'm looking for is, do I know who each of these individuals is? Do I know how they're related to maybe the one particular ancestor I'm researching? Am I seeing different surnames that I need to be aware of? So maybe, families marrying into each, daughters marrying, or daughters and marrying, so we have a different surname in here. Those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. But again, the most important thing is making sure I get a picture of, I try to take it as a whole, but a picture of every single one in there so that I don't overlook and miss somebody important that could be pertinent in my research later on. Okay, this one seems kind of obvious. The family marker, if there is one present. Now this seems obvious because, and not everyone in a family plot has the same surname. So this is kind of important to make note of. And the reason I put this up here is because, yes, it seems obvious, but I've forgotten to do it. So I thought, let's just put it out there. Okay, you want to put it out there. So I wanted to show you this example. This is actually one I did just recently. I was up in New England doing some cemetery research, and as you can tell, it was snowy and cold, and was a little difficult since snow was covering many of the gravestones. But I took a picture of this headstone, the Solomon Weller headstone. Now, Solomon is a very common name within this cemetery. I saw a number of headstones, probably 3 or 4 headstones that had the name Solomon, but only this one had Solomon Weller. And this actually tells me something as I'm going through my pictures that I did take, that I was able to take. It helps me, it grounds exactly where this one was and who belongs to the Solomon Weller area, the families. So it's really important to be able to make sure you have the picture of the headstone as well. And yes, I did look on the back of it, but there was not anything. Okay, so I have a bonus tip because I always like to have an extra one. And when you are in that cemetery, as you're walking around, you've taken the photographs, the entrance, you've gotten your landscape, you've gotten your ancestors' photograph, and all those possible collateral folks who are out there. I want you to think about some of those interesting tombstone shapes that you're seeing and some of the symbols that you're seeing on those tombstones. So tombstones do come in a variety of shapes. Some are very artistic, and some, that's what they're there. Their shapes really are more indicative of perhaps the art that might have been popular at that time. But some of the markings give us clues to what was important to the community residents at that time. Cemeteries, particularly like city cemeteries, larger cemeteries, speak to that community. They tell the community stories. And so you might see what the predominant faith was for that community. You might see fraternal organizations that were popular in the community. So these are important things to think about. Maybe your ancestor was part of a particular fraternal organization, but didn't necessarily have the symbol on his tombstone, his or her tombstone. But if you're seeing a lot of people, if you're seeing a lot of that symbol within that cemetery, you might think, oh, maybe I should check to see if there are any records that would pertain to my ancestor. Was he in one of those? And maybe I should check some of those records to see, because it was obviously an important part of the community story. These are just some of the examples that you can see here. So, we have a variety of fraternal organizations. We have, certainly the faith, religious and militaries. Sometimes you will see different cross shapes that are indicative of faith. We have an anchor, and again, another fraternal organization. This is the kind of thing I'm looking to kind of get that piece, social history piece, out of the cemetery. I want to, again, know what was important to this community and how did it pertain to my ancestor. The more we understand about our ancestors, the more that we get than just the dates, birth and death dates on a tombstone, is we want to make sure we're getting that piece of social history, that we understand who they were in life and not just when they were born and when they died and when they were buried. All right, so I want to review these. Okay, so you want to take that front gate, guys. Remember, all signage, any signage that's there, take a picture of it. The general layout of that cemetery. And again, this is a great time to maybe use like a video and take a video of the landscape to kind of get that idea of what you're looking at, maybe, and as well as getting some idea of how the cemetery is laid out for you. Of course, your ancestor's grave, don't forget the back of it. Definitely. I can't say that enough times. Gravestones on all sides of your ancestor. So who was buried next to them? Who was buried to the right? Who was buried to the left, front, back, all around them? Who was close to them? All the graves in the family plot. So making sure you get your ancestor's grave, obviously, but who else is there? On numerous occasions, this has been a way that I have found children, again, I mentioned earlier, who had lived between a census year and between the census years, and so really wasn't seeing many records of that child. So a chance to find those types of graves and put those stories on the family tree as well. Definitely take a picture of that family marker. And again, it could be in a certain shape, as we saw in that example, was actually a large cross indicating the faith of that family. But regardless of the shape, you want to make sure you're taking a good picture of that and any symbols or markings that are there. And of course, any interesting gravestone shapes and symbols that you see within the community as a whole, to get that social history piece, to see what was important to the community, what was important to the citizens, and how they might have lived daily life, any types of organizations they might have been a part of, anything of nature that could have bearing on your genealogy research. And ultimately, because the cemetery is telling a story of that community or of that particular family, again, the better we understand, and every little clue that we can get, we can start to then find more records for our ancestors and tell their story more completely. All right, so my challenge to you is to head out when the weather is appropriate and start taking some of those photos and play around with it and have fun with it. Don't try to be a perfectionist about it, but get out there and take those photographs and see where that leads your research. All right, Esther, I'll be happy to come back and take some questions. Oh, do I need to stop?
No. You did it. You
did it. I was like, oh, do I miss it?
No, there's just a delay of moving the slides out, but we're back.
Oh, good.
Yeah, thank you so much. I found that so fascinating. And my favorite anecdote was about the recipe on the back of the tomb.
I have seen that. I think it was a cookie recipe or something, and you know, it was one of those. You hear that. The saying of, I'll take it to my grave with me, or I'll never reveal my recipe until, you know, and they'll stick it on the back. I've seen it.
I especially love it because in my family, my great-grandmother had 2 secret recipes that, I mean, we were allowed to know them, of course, you know, as her great-granddaughter, but it was a family secret, and it was, you know, very well guarded.
I know. It's so funny. And the thing was, I think on that particular recipe, it was a cookie recipe. I was like, well, it didn't look all that different to me. I'm like, okay, that sounds normal. It wasn't, but that's what she was known for, so that's important.
Well, I'm sure it gave you a good chuckle as you were viewing that in the cemetery.
Oh, wow.
We received some great comments here of discoveries that some of our viewers made as they were searching in cemeteries, but we do have a few questions if that's okay. That will take. Okay. So the first one here is from Sarah. She asks, how can I find the GPS location when I'm taking photos of
That's
the
a good question. I don't know if I've ever actually documented the GPS. I think you can do it on your phone, either through an app, you might be able to do it if you have your location turned on with Google Maps. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that would probably be the first thing I would do. I think Billion Graves has that function as well. If anybody, I don't know if anybody knows, that'd be great. Oh, Amy, over there's Google Earth. Yes, similar thing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, we have a question here from Kathy who asks, where do you find out who takes care of small rural
that is a
cemeteries
great
when there are no
question.
signs?
And so what I do is here in the States, if I know where it is and what county it is, then I go to the county offices and I ask, because there's going to be a county office and at minimal a state office that has records of it or is in charge of the local cemeteries, and even the ones that are no longer actively being used, but the families that are out, the family cemeteries that are out there in the county, you should be able to find records of that at the county offices. Usually what I have to do is I call and I ask them, I tell them what I'm looking for, and then I ask them what office would handle that, because that can differ from county to county or state to state. But start at the county offices and ask them.
Okay. Benita says, how do you organize your cemetery photos? And you must have many.
Yeah, I do have a lot, and it really kind of freaks my kids out, just to say. I mean, my kids are adults, but they're just like, Mom, really? So when I organize them, when I'm out taken, so I take them, I start, and like I said, I always take a picture of the front gate or entrance way, so I know that everything following is at least part of that. And when I get back, I sit down and I label them right away. I upload them to Google Photos, so they're there in the cloud. And then I go in right away and I label anything that needs to be labeled. I pull any notes that I've made while I'm out there. I always have like a notepad in my pocket or something like that, and to write notes or to draw. Sometimes I'll just make a sketch for that, but I always label them the same way. So I'll label them, like surname, first name, cemetery, and then usually a date at the end. So, and that's just a personal system. People can do it. You can label it however you want. Just make sure it is you're consistent from section to section. So that's how I tend to label, and I keep those in cemetery folders on my computer in Google Photos. And then of course I can upload anything that I want to upload. I'll just upload it to my family tree that I have online. Stick to it. Yeah, there's nothing magical about whether you put first name first or last name first or however you set that up. It's just as long as you were consistent with it. That's the important part.
Okay. Carol says, my most difficult gravestone to figure out was the one for my grandmother's first child, who I knew was not my grandfather's child. The stone reads, daughter of Mrs. Denny, Mrs. W.R. Denny. She died shortly after my grandparents were married. It sure didn't help in figuring out who my grandmother had been married to before. Is this
it could certainly be yeah, I mean, I've seen things like that where actually I have something similar that I don't know who the father was for the child. Actually, she lived to be adulthood and I still don't know who the father was, but yeah, I mean, that can absolutely happen. If possible, you could potentially see if you can find the burial record for that, if the cemetery is still active, or if you can find this, track down the cemetery record. Those get pretty tough to be able to figure out from a gravestone perspective. Oftentimes the answers for that are probably not going to come from the cemetery. It's going to, at best, you're going to see it in that cemetery record or burial record, probably not an obituary. If they may have had one, but I would look for it, but oftentimes they didn't have one. So that one's a tough one, definitely.
Okay. I think that's it for now in terms of questions. Just any other lasting advice that you'd like to leave our viewers with? I loved your comment about getting down and getting dirty, and not being afraid of taking pictures, lying down to get a better shot. So I guess, going prepared, as you talked about at the beginning, is just so important, so that so that you feel comfortable when you're getting down in the dirt and taking those photos.
Absolutely. You want to be comfortable. You want to be, I've gotten where, I actually wear my hiking boots because if I'm in a cemetery that is not necessarily, that might be more overgrown or something like that. So, I don't have to worry about the bugs as much, and because I don't like the bugs, but so that I can take care of that. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give somebody when they're doing cemetery research is remember, always ask yourself why. Why is my ancestor buried here? Why here? Why then? What is it about this? So always wanting to know, why this cemetery? Why in this location? Why here? So one of the pictures I showed was Caswell, and his wife Mary was the one on the back. And I remember thinking, why are they here? Because I was standing in a church cemetery. But the catch was, they were buried before that church was ever there. And so I had to stop and think, why there? Why then? So that took me on, I had to research that. It wasn't just because of the church. They weren't there because of the church. Why were they buried there? Well, it turns out that part of the cemetery was the original family cemetery for his wife's family, the Thomas family. And so I was literally standing on the family land. I didn't know. The family did eventually donate it to the church. So always asking yourself, why here? Why them? Why here? Why now? Kind of thing.
Wow, that's incredible to find out that was the family.
And that can be, again, that's here in the I was standing in North Carolina for that. But, same thing, if I'm over in Germany or wherever looking at a gravestone, it could simply be you're in the church and they were there because they were members of the church. It can be very simple like that, but it can be something else as well.
Wow. Okay, great advice to leave us off with. And I see so many words of thank you to you. It was so informative and so many tips. And for anyone who would like to watch it again, just to remind you all that all of our Facebook Lives are still available on the MyHeritage Facebook page after the session is over. So you just go to facebook.com/MyHeritage, and under the videos section, you can find this one, all of Lisa's past sessions, all of our other fantastic speakers that we've had. So they're all up there, and you can just go through them all and check them all out. Many, many different subjects. So Lisa, now we get to give away a MyHeritage Complete Plan to one lucky winner.
Yay.
Yeah, very exciting. So our winner today is Karen Honiski Helwig. And Karen wrote to us and she said, I spent years as a child visiting family graves in my hometown with my mom and my aunt. Not until I was over 35 and started doing genealogy on my own did I discover that my great-grandparents were also buried there and within 50 feet of some of them. I don't think my mom and my aunt knew about them because we never left flowers for Decoration Day, now Memorial Day. So what a discovery, Karen. And I think that goes to what Lisa was saying about, looking around the graves of your ancestors, because you never know what you'll find even just in the vicinity.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
So congratulations, Karen, and we'll be in touch with you through private message to claim your prize, your MyHeritage Complete Plan. For all those of you out there in the audience, make sure to check out our free and unlimited photo tools that are available until the 5th. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Esther. Really glad that you had me. I enjoyed it.
Us too. This was so informative, and I think we all benefited from this session. So thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.